You're listening to Healing Voices Project, where we share stories and the latest information from people who fight addiction every day. I'm Mike Torville, your host and author of Voices from the Fallen. Thank you for listening, for following, and most of all, for sharing with people you care about. Make your voice count too. Hello, everybody. Thanks. I'm Mike Torville. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Mike Torville, host of Healing Voices Project. Glad to have you back again. And today we have a new friend, Leigha Neiford. Thanks for joining us, Leigha.
Thank you for
Glad you're here. Yes. We're going to talk today about a few things. One, Leigha's experiences, her involvement with AA, her involvement with the Mental Health Association here in Western Massachusetts. You are 36 years old, and you've had a lifetime of all kinds of exposure to addiction.
Right.
You're in recovery now. You've been sober now for 2 years and 4 months.
Yep.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
And I know during that course of recovery, you had a little relapse.
Mm-hmm.
You came back, and you've been going through this for a number of years now, since you were in your teens?
When I started recovery the first time?
When you started using?
Yeah, about early 20s, yeah.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
So you had at least 16 plus years
Yes.
of involvement in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the last 2 years and 4 months, you've certainly been involved with recovery, with AA, with the Mental Health Association. And of course, you work with several people that we've gotten to know through the program, too.
Right.
In fact, we always appreciate some of our guests that refer. We've had Karen Blanchard on from the Michael J. Diaz House. We've had John Shea from Michael J. Diaz, and hence the referral from them. Great people to work with, and your association, friendship with John Shea and the people there. So anyway, it's nice having you.
Thank you.
Sure. So, Leigha, you're involved with the MHA.
I am.
And we're going to talk about that, and of course AA, and you're a sponsor
I am.
also for several women, correct?
2 at the moment.
2 at the moment.
Yeah.
But let's start with how this all began, because it gives you some context to what you're doing, to see what your path was, what challenges you had, how you overcame, and what led to what you're doing now in support of other people. So let's go way back, way back to the beginning. You were growing up here in Western Massachusetts?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your first, how was growing up, and what was your first exposure to any type of substances, whether it's alcohol or drugs? How did this all begin?
I have a large history of addiction in my family, so pretty much as early as I can remember being exposed to it. Both of my parents are self-diagnosed alcoholics, so we spent a large portion of my childhood, up until about 4 years old, living with my grandmother, because my father was completely not in the picture, and my mom was progressing in her own alcoholism, so she was at the point where she couldn't really care for my older brother and I. And then my little brother was born addicted to a substance, and DCF took all 3 of us.
So as young as prior to you remembering,
Yeah.
I mean, when is during this 4, because you don't have much memory before 4.
Right.
And so since you can recall, this is all you've been exposed to.
Right.
You lived with your grandmother, and then DSF took over your foster homes?
Yeah, and the foster home that they put us in was not great, so I suffered a lot of different kinds of abuse in that foster home for a number of years.
But you remained in that home despite that?
For the most part. I was sent to a boarding school at one point. I was sent to Brightside a few times, because one of the behaviors that I picked up during that time was that if I acted bad, I could get out of the house for a little bit, so anywhere was being better than there and experiencing.
So acting bad was sort of a reward.
Yeah.
To get you out
Yep.
of that situation.
As long as I was out of there, I didn't really care. So.
And where did you go when you were out of there?
Brightside or
Okay.
I think I went to Brattleboro.
So when you were
once.
out of the house, you ended up at some place like Brightside.
Right.
You'd remain there for a period of time, and what would happen there
At the foster home?
at Brightside?
Oh, it was usually like a week stay, and then they would send me back home.
Where that cycle would continue?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have several different foster homes, or just that one?
Eventually, I would get to other ones,
Uh-huh.
so that one foster home ended up adopting us.
Okay. Us, meaning all three of you?
Yes.
At once?
Yes.
Well, that's a lot to take on.
The story goes that they tried to give me back and keep my brothers, and DCF would not allow it, so...
Give you back to who?
DCF. They
Back
wanted
to-
to give me back and keep my brothers, and DCF said, no, you have to give all three or keep all three, so...
So they reluctantly said okay.
Right.
But were you aware of this?
I was aware that I was not well liked, and so in my very young mind, my biological mother didn't want me. My adopted mother didn't want me, so I believed the problem was me, that there was something wrong with me, that I was just fundamentally unlovable at that point.
And about how old were you then?
Prior to 8.
So you're not obviously capable of
Right.
really thinking through as an adult, but of course you can't help those feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then as years went by, did that get worse? Any better? What changed?
When I was 12, I was put back into the foster care system. I went to a group home for a number of years and then different foster homes until I turned 18.
So you ultimately did get separated from your brothers.
I did.
How did your brothers deal with this?
One of them, he was a baby when we went to live there, so he really didn't know the backstory as much as my older brother and I did, because we remembered who our parents were.
Mm-hmm.
But so the little brother was just kind of indifferent. My older brother, he used to try to protect me from the physical abuse, but he was also in his teens. And
He's young also.
Yeah, he's
he
playing football, and he's a really popular kid. So I understand, I certainly felt safer whenever he was home because I knew that he would at least try to help me, like the one person in the home who would help me, because there were 7 kids in the home, so.
And you couldn't rely on or trust
Right.
anybody except for your brother.
Mm-hmm.
But then this went on for years, and you just bounced back and forth for years. Now, you said you had exposure to addiction as a child with your parents.
Right.
But you didn't see your parents that much during this time.
No, I also have an uncle and an aunt. My uncle passed away as a direct result of this disease. My aunt is still with us. They are also self-diagnosed alcoholics. So I can remember my uncle being on the couch and being drunk or being hungover at 3 years old. I remember that.
So it was all of your exposure everywhere you turned. It was there. So you went to other foster homes, and as a teenager, when did you start, and how did you start using yourself, and what led to that?
I think I just suffered a complete lack of confidence or
Self-esteem?
any kind of sense of identity. I
Okay.
didn't know who I was. I never even had the chance to explore what I liked or didn't like. So I would just become a chameleon to whoever was standing next to me because I had such a desperate need to fit in or be accepted because I had never experienced fitting in or being accepted.
You're disconnected from virtually everything.
Right.
There was nothing you could connect to. And so you're feeling a little isolated?
Yeah.
And
even going into high school, when I made friends, I would lie to them because I was embarrassed that I was in a foster home. So I just learned how to manipulate. I learned how to lie. I learned how to play the victim in my head very early of, well, all this happened to me and it's not my fault. So it's just that I was very angry at God, this, quote unquote supposed God. I was very angry because I was just a little kid. Why would you let these things happen to me if you're so real? So it just kind of all built up, and I don't remember the first time I ever took a drink, but I do remember that it made me feel like somebody, right? Because I had felt so invisible my entire life that drinking and acting like a fool or, being loud and obnoxious, and even if it was negative attention is better than no attention. And so it made me feel like I was somebody.
like I'm here.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying attention to me.
Right.
Yeah. And it gives you some, even this little, some connection to the others that were also participating, right?
Right.
And so it started with drinking then. And so you found, hey, this is a little, use the old word, escape, a little outlet,
Right.
a place where I can actually fit in. So no wonder why you'd kept using, right? So you made some friends?
No, I had associates or acquaintances. Now today, knowing what a friendship actually looks like, I never had friends. I had people that I would use when I wanted to go out, or people that I could call when I wanted to vent about something. But I never participated in any of those friendships as being a two-sided thing. People were objects. People were, what can I get from you type of things. And not material things, but just whatever I so desired or thought that I wanted from this person. That's what people were to me.
Yeah. So you endured this through school?
Yes.
Did you graduate from school?
I had a child when I was 17 years old.
Oh.
Yep. And so all I ever wanted was to be the mom to her that I didn't have.
Because then that was
right.
an obvious connection there. That's
Right.
something that you could cling to and say, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Unfortunately, with untreated alcoholism, I was not able to do that at all. But so I ended up, I got a high school diploma. I just didn't actually get it from the high school that I was in.
Okay. Because you were out of school,
Right.
but you got the diploma. And you had your child. And so now you're a young mom, 17, 18 years old, and you go, now I got to face the world. Now what do I do with this, with not only yourself, but your child? What happened after that?
I re-met my biological mother. She was involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. She was about, I'm not sure, 11 years sober at the time.
Okay. So you said you re-met her. There was a gap of time where you hadn't seen her.
A large gap, yeah.
Many years.
Yeah.
Was this connection intentional?
I think, yes, yep.
Okay, so...
Sometime around when I had my daughter.
Okay. So you were able to find her and meet her and...
To my knowledge, my adopted mother always had some kind of contact with her and just
Gotcha.
didn't.
Okay.
The terms of it was supposed to be an open adoption, and those terms were not respected.
Maybe they had their reasons to.
Right.
Yeah. So what happened when you met your mom again?
Eventually, I moved back in with her. She was sober. I used to go to meetings with her just because I wanted to get to know her. I wanted to do the things that she liked to do. And I remember it's kind of funny. They would go around the room and introduce themselves, and I would say, "Hi, I'm Leigha, and my mom's an alcoholic," and everybody would laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. But little did I know.
Yeah. I'm with her, right? And so also, too, your child, is it son or daughter?
My daughter.
Your daughter. You had to have care for your daughter. Did you work?
I did, yep.
So you worked, cared for your daughter. And things just rolled along merrily?
And then Friday would come. So I would work during the week. I would cook dinner, take her to dance class. For all intensive purposes, the normal life, right?
Okay.
But I didn't know how to feel feelings. I didn't know how to be emotionally available for anybody, not even myself.
Even your daughter.
Yeah, especially not my daughter. So my idea of being a good parent was making sure that she was clean and well dressed, or I would take her to the park because that's what the moms on TV would do, not because
all the things you had to do. Mechanically you had to do these things, okay, but emotionally
that's basically
you weren't.
A very good term for how I was living life, just on autopilot. I didn't really get joy or happiness from things. I was kind of just
going through the motions,
stumbling along with no purpose, no aim, no idea what I was doing in life. But I would have told you that I was doing well.
You hadn't had much practice at your emotions anyways.
Right.
For all those years. So this went along, you said, until Fridays came. What happened on Fridays?
I would start desperately looking for somebody to go out drinking with me, because again, that's the only time that I felt pretty. That's the only time that I felt validation. It's the only time that I felt like I was somebody in the world. And I didn't care if I didn't like the person who would finally agree to go out with me. As long as I had somebody to go to the bar and get drunk with me, that's all I cared about.
You had a drinking partner.
Oh, yeah.
That's it, yeah. And this went on
Yep, until I was about 23.
Mm-hmm. Then you probably felt a lot older, but looking back, you think about how young you were then, right?
Right.
And but at the time, you just think, "Oh my gosh, I have this child. I'm going through all this." But
And I think in my head, I kept thinking, well, I deserve to go out on the weekends because I'm only 21. I'm only 22. I deserve to live. You know.
what are all the other 21-year-olds
Right.
doing, right? So after all. Especially with what you're dealing with Monday through Friday, and so yeah, well, so this just went on for a while as your daughter's, I was saying, slowly growing up, probably quickly growing up, and saying, okay,
And then the Fridays turned into Fridays and Saturdays, turned into Tuesdays and Fridays, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It just became an all the time thing. I would come home 6 a.m, but I would, because my mother's room was below mine and I didn't want her to hear me coming home at that time, I knew I had to get in the house before my daughter woke up. So
she was the one who was watching your daughter.
Right, so I would put her to bed and then go out. And I had to get home before she woke up. So I would go through the back gate, pull my daughter's little tricycle up to my bedroom window and use that to climb in so that my mother wouldn't hear me walking across the
Did the neighbors ever see you sneaking through the window?
Oh, no, it was in the back. It was in the fenced-in backyard. That would have been kind of funny, though.
So you're, like you said, you learned how to manipulate and lie and all this, so you were getting pretty good at this deception, right? And as it progressively got worse, as your daughter's growing up, and was there a time when you said, what am I doing? Did anything ultimately, it had to work its way into getting worse or getting better? What changed?
So when I was 23, I got into a car accident, and the doctor prescribed me opiates.
Why?
Why the opiates?
Why the opiate? You were injured.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
You had an injury that. Did you need surgery? Did
No,
you break a bone, or?
I had a concussion, and
Okay.
My kind of whole face smashed into the windshield. So I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. I was not driving. I was in the passenger seat.
Okay.
So I also wasn't like paying attention to the road, and I didn't have any time to like.
And the driver wasn't either.
She she had a seatbelt on, but
You didn't.
I did not.
Well, okay, so, but you were injured, obviously, and you didn't get a DUI because you weren't the one driving.
Yes, right.
But that accident, she put you on opiates.
Yes.
And how did that go?
It was amazing, because alcohol let me feel like somebody, but opiates let me feel nothing. Nothing. I didn't have to feel all the fear of being that little broken girl all the time.
It just took away all those.
It was numb. It was the perfect escape, and I feel like up until that point in my life, I had been searching for any outlet, like you described earlier, any kind of escape to not be me, not feel the things that I felt that I didn't know how to identify, I didn't know how to deal with. The fear that was always there of what are people thinking of me? I'm not good enough. I'm a failure, right? That just all went away.
When your prescription ran out, what happened?
I continued to buy them on the street.
How'd you know how?
My older brother was a roofer, and there was, I knew where to go.
Okay, you figured it out.
Yeah.
How'd you know what you were taking? How'd you know if it was safe?
I guess I didn't.
You didn't?
Didn't care either.
But you continued to, and did it start to... what were the effects? In other words, as you started taking them, and the effect, as your tolerance built up, what changed?
You have to take more and more. Usually, well, in my experience. So the more that I did, the more I needed to do, which then leads to financial problems, which then leads to, for me, hanging out with the wrong kind of people, doing the wrong kinds of things. And that resulted in, at 24 years old, I was sentenced to 4 to 6 years in state prison for participating in a crime as a direct result of
Okay, let's go with that here
abuse.
Because as a direct result, what were you selling?
No,
What put you in jail?
I drove a car that was used to... The other person robbed a store, and I was driving the car, so...
So you're as culpable as he was?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you went to jail? For how long?
5 years.
And Did you use drugs in jail?
I did not.
How did that withdrawal affect you?
At the time, I think I was more using other substances right before I ended up going in. So I'm not. The whole thing is a little bit fuzzy, but they were still giving Librium at that time, and I feel like that kind of helped with the withdrawal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're in jail.
Mm-hmm.
You're not able to drink or use drugs.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you spend your time, and how did it affect? Okay, now who am I? Making new friends in jail? How did that go?
I did learn how to make friends. I kind of learned how to be myself a little bit. They did request that I go to anger management 4 times. Back then, I used to present anger a lot. Right.
Well, there's a way of putting it. I presented anger
because I wasn't really angry. I was afraid. But when I felt afraid, I didn't like that, and so I would choose to show you anger instead, because then you couldn't exploit me. I was no longer vulnerable.
How did you show anger?
I would just get loud, or I was very easily offended. I was overly
a little
defensive
sensitive
because I was trying to, without even realizing it, I was trying to protect the little girl that I couldn't protect back then. And so any slight or offense, I was jumping down your throat. But also it was because I was afraid that you were telling me I wasn't good enough. That's what I hear all the time, every day. Doesn't matter if you're telling me the sky is blue. Somehow my brain is going to turn it into the sky is blue because I'm not good enough.
All that earlier history, experience, trauma, all those things you went through were all coming out in the anger. And a lot of it, too, is because now what? I'm going to spend a few years here in jail. Okay, make the best of it because you have no choice. But did you think about, okay, gee, I things are messed up a little bit for me to end up here. And then what am I going to do now? What am I going to do when I get out of here? What else changed for you in jail?
Well, they offer, substance abuse classes. They have AA meetings that come in, and I would go to them and I would learn, but I would not apply a single thing to myself.
Did you go willingly or because you were coerced into going?
Probably a little both.
Okay.
I knew that I had messed up big time. I knew that I was very sad that I couldn't see my daughter. I knew that I had my first sort of experience with not being able to uphold that vow I made when she was born, right, to be the mother that I never had. Here I was already failing at it. But in my mind, my alcoholic looked like, an alcoholic looked like my mother. And because my story didn't look exactly like hers, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have a problem. I just got caught up with the wrong people, doing the wrong things, and as long as I stay away from that, I'm going to be fine.
You could justify it, right? Oh, yeah. So you went to AA meetings, but you did it just, that's not me, but I'll go.
Yeah.
And then you continued with that. 5 years goes by. It's time to get out. And you now what? You can see your daughter again. Did your daughter visit you?
She did.
Okay.
On holidays.
And then you're home. And life has to begin again. What happens then?
So I went to the Phoenix House in Springfield. And when I don't know what to do, I do what everybody else is doing because, God forbid, I look stupid or have some kind of original thought that might make people look at me sideways or look at me funny. So I just do what everybody else is doing.
And meaning, what's everybody else doing?
So at the time in the Phoenix House, everybody else was getting a sponsor, going to meetings. So that's what I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There was a gentleman there. He's actually the twin brother of Christian Diaz.
Okay. Yeah.
He was there at the same time as me, and his wife used to come in and visit him, and he would just tell me, she knows her stuff, she's really good, and I remembered very specifically, I texted her and asked her to be my temporary sponsor, and this year will make 7 years that she's been my sponsor.
Temporary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So the other thing, too, is when you said earlier, which is, I think, I don't want to speak for you, but how it's hard to make friends, emotions didn't connect. I think as time goes by, you're finding that connection, that emotional connection, learning through changing that these emotional connections are important, and you're experiencing what you didn't as a child.
Right.
One being your sponsor, And so you were going through this, and then okay. So what then changed? Because you were sober, forced soberness from jail.
Right.
You get out. You're at the Phoenix house, and you say, "Okay, I have a sponsor." Great.
I stayed sober for a little bit over 2 years at that point.
Okay. Do you feel better?
I did.
All right.
We went through the steps. I was going to meetings. I started to work as a professional hairstylist.
Yeah.
But that was fear, because I believed that my criminal record would stop me from getting a quote-unquote real job. So I just didn't even try because I was afraid of the rejection. So I worked as a professional hairstylist, and I started to sponsor women. I showed up on my daughter's doorstep every other week, whether they slammed the door in my face, whether they told me she was too sick to come out, and she was 12 at this point. So
you were persistent, obviously.
I showed up. I was reliable. I was there when I said I would be there, and I learned how to do those things through going through the steps and through my sponsor and through other women in AA, because that's what they did for me. They showed up when they said they would. If they told me they were going to be there to pick me up, they were there to pick me up. And I kind of learned
the importance of that
almost for the first time, how to actually say I'm going to do something and then do it.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I would just kind of
it didn't matter,
run off at the mouth and make all these empty promises, and
none of the commitments mattered because you weren't connected to anyone for those commitments to matter anyway, right? And so now you're finding that this is important. You're learning a new behavior, and learning how important those emotional
it was almost
feeling
like being a baby and just learning how to be a good person.
Right, and you say, wow, I was missing all this.
Right. And
so now,
before that, it's not like I ever woke up and said, hey, I'm going to be a crappy person today. I always had the intentions of being a good person, but with untreated alcoholism, I couldn't make those intentions turn into action.
No, but also, too, as a child, you didn't have that normal guidance
right.
that other kids do with parents and so on. But now you want to be a mom, and you want to provide some of that guidance, and you're a little handicapped because you didn't have the practice or the knowledge or experience of doing that. So your daughter's now 12. You're getting to know her again. You're sober for 2 years.
So by the time I was 2 years sober, she was 14.
She was 14. You relapsed. What happened?
So I actually got custody of her back.
Prior to the relapse, obviously.
So once I got custody of her back, I was just filled with fear all the time. That I was walking such a fine line of trying to be like her parent, but I was really behaving more like her friend because I was terrified that she was going to choose to go live with somebody else, because at 14, in the eyes of the court, they get to choose. She had to sign the paper to come back to me. So I just lived in constant fear that I was going to misstep and she was going to leave. So on top of that, I had the sole responsibility financially for her. So I would work more to have to, because as a hairstylist, it's, it ebbs and flows. Some weeks are great, some weeks are not great. So I would work more and kind of go to meetings less, and I just slowly fizzled out. I slowly just stopped calling my sponsor. I hear the saying a lot in AA, and it rings so true for me that the life AA gave me, I let that life take me back out of AA, because I just got so busy, and so I need to do this, and AA kind of just fell to the back burner. My connections kind of just fell to the back burner. I was still going to church at the time of my relapse, but in my experience, I'm aware the big book says that I need to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life, but that can't be the only part of the puzzle for me. I need the connection. I need those meetings of listening to the newcomer tell me, their experiences and keeping it fresh in my brain. I need all of those pieces of the puzzle, not just the relationship with the higher power.
Yeah, it all fits in.
Right.
It's not one by itself that's going to help you. But something triggered a relapse. Right. So
every time that I speak at the podium, I say this part because it was such a pivotal moment in my journey. And I don't know how familiar you are with the big book. In the chapter More About Alcoholism, the very last paragraph says that the real alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. So I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped reaching out to women. I wasn't really, maybe if I was praying, I was doing it on my way out the door. It just wasn't that important. It wasn't as vital to my success anymore, right? Because I felt like I was...
You seemed to have other priorities
Right.
that were taking over.
And so I moved back to my biological mother's house after going through a breakup, and she was no longer sober at the time. I choose my words carefully because she deserves to speak her truth and not have me speak her truth, so I choose my words carefully, but she was no longer sober at the time. So I was sitting at the kitchen table with all these feelings of failure and loneliness and breakup feelings, and without any of those defenses like the sponsor or the meetings or the prayer, there was nothing between me and those drugs, and I took them.
You started taking the drugs.
I did.
Looking back, you see how important you're talking about those connections and everything,
right?
How important they are, and the absence of them, what leads back to the relapse. So you started using again.
I did.
And then any consequences to that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In a period of, I think my relapse was about 2 years total. I don't say that I lost things, but because to say that I lost something is to imply that I accidentally misplaced it, but there was no accidentally and there was no misplacing. I gave it back. I gave back my daughter. I gave back the apartment. I gave back the car. I slowly but surely gave back every single thing that I had gained in my 2 years of sobriety. All of it. My self-respect, my dignity, my ability to make choices, right? Because now drugs and alcohol were making choices for me. They were just running the show completely. There wasn't even a self-will involved. It was almost without my permission, against my own will. I would wake up in the morning and do X, Y, and Z to make sure that I was okay, that I wasn't getting sick, and it just got to the point at the end of that relapse. I was homeless. I was unemployed, probably unemployable, but I wasn't even attempting to get a job at that point. Nobody wanted to be around me. I was so discouraged and hopeless. Like that. Hopeless is such a powerful word, but it doesn't even describe how I felt in those last days. It was just beyond. And I used to say that I wanted to die, but I know today I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to live like that anymore. And I felt like there was no way out. I didn't know how to get myself out of it because in my mind I was saying, well, I tried AA and that didn't work. Or I went to detox and that didn't work, but I really didn't go to detox. I would, spin dry for a couple days and go right back to what I was doing. Of course I'm not going to get any better at that point, and it just got to the point where I was so far down this tunnel of guilt and shame and remorse and just feeling like I had so completely ruined and failed that what's the point anymore? What's the point of even continuing?
Yeah. What happened? I mean, did you woke up one day and said, okay, that's enough?
Yeah.
Something.
It wasn't a special
Really?
day. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
Prior to actually getting sober, about 2 months before, that same gentleman that I was in the Phoenix house with, who his wife became my sponsor, he ran into me at a gas station. And I did not look well. I know I did not look well. And he must have told his wife where to find me, my sponsor. So the next day, I remember sitting on a curb and I was just hanging my head in my hands. I didn't have the courage to kill myself, probably because I didn't actually want to die, but I was like imagining I'd be walking down the street in a car with just, some kind of final destination catastrophe, right? Like just some out of the norm, accident, terrible accident would just take me out of this world. And I was convinced that like my daughter's better off. Nobody's even going to miss me. So I was like sitting on the curb, just begging God to like, just kill me, just take me. And I got up and went to walk across the parking lot, and there was a car following me, and it was my sponsor. So, yeah.
Wow.
God answered my prayer, just not in the way that I thought that I wanted him to.
Mm-hmm. You wanted to end your life, but really you just wanted to end the
right.
type of life you had.
Mm-hmm.
So she followed you.
Mm-hmm.
You stopped somewhere. Would you turn around and say, why are you stalking me?
No. I was very happy to see her, but I was also very embarrassed.
Yeah.
This woman was quite possibly the first example of unconditional love I had ever had in my entire life.
You probably didn't even know people were capable of that.
Right,
yeah.
Right. She's the reason that I know how to give that to other people in return today, because I didn't speak to her for about a year, and
She still was there
Right,
for
she
you.
was just still there,
Yeah.
arms open, willing to help me in whatever capacity I needed her to.
And you got reconnected with AA.
Mm-hmm.
Reconnected.
Yep.
With her.
So after that day, I did go to detox, but I did not stay sober when I came out of detox. It wasn't until about 2 months later.
Okay.
I was so tired. I was tired.
You sort of ran out of any energy,
Yeah, it
any
was just,
ability to continue.
I was just done. I was just done, and I was willing at that point, like I was so...
To concede.
I was so desperate
Yeah.
to just have it be done that I was willing to do anything it took at that point.
Going through that certainly is challenges, but you stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
After that, stuck with your sponsor, stuck with
Mm-hmm.
AA. And then through that, sobriety, which is 2 years and 4 months ago now,
Yep.
You have now, have a job.
Mm-hmm.
You work with the MHA.
Mm-hmm.
You're also obviously reconnected with the AA. You're a sponsor to
Mm-hmm.
several women.
Mm-hmm.
You're reconnected with your daughter.
I did not.
Where's your daughter now?
She lives with her father's sister.
Okay. You have a relationship with your daughter at all?
She has not spoken to me.
Okay. You're working towards that.
I am.
Yeah. Good.
The thing with that is that's on her time and God's time. And it's really easy for me to say, feel bad for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, my daughter won't even talk to me. But in reality, I caused a lot of damage in that little girl's life for a very long time. And who am I to think that 2 years of doing the right thing is enough to make up for that, right? So, like, when she's ready, all I can do is be here and be sober and be the kind of woman that she wants to be around.
Yeah. How old is your daughter now?
She just turned 18 in August.
Wow. You're both young. Well, I hope that, and it will, I'm confident that will find its way. So, what are you doing with the MHA now, Mental Health Association? What's your job? How do you spend your day?
So currently I am a supervisor of 2 divisions, so I kind of float around when there's the turnover or somebody's on extended medical leave. So I've been with them for a little over 1.5 years. Most of that 1.5 years I've been in the Division of Recovery and Housing. So all the participants in that division have dual diagnosis, so they're co-occurring disorders of mental health and substance use. So it's been quite interesting to be exposed to that and experience that, because it's coming from a different level than I experienced. And of course I get to use my experiences to try to help them, but I hear so many staff get discouraged, right? Well, they're never going to get it. What's the point? But that's not for me to decide, right? So I can take them to meetings, and there have been times I've taken somebody to a meeting that I have no idea if they're cognitively grasping what's being said or what's going on. Sure. But that's not my job to decide that they're never going to understand recovery, that they're never going to get sober. That's not my job, because I'm sure that somebody once looked at me and said, well, she's never going to get it, and like, I wouldn't be here if people hadn't believed in me or helped me along the way. I would not have gotten this far. So I'm going to continue to take them to meetings. I'm going to continue to share my experiences, because
not give up.
It could be 50 years from now, but at some point maybe their life will be better, maybe their quality of life will be better because somebody didn't give up on them, right? And the senior vice president of my division, she's an amazing woman. She puts on workshops maybe once a year, the recovery workshop. I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was like 75% of people with mental health and substance use are more likely to recover than not in their lifetime. And I remember when she asked, what do you guys think the percentage is? I think the highest number somebody said was like 50%. Mm-hmm. So even in our own minds, we all have that kind of stereotype that, well, these people, how can they possibly recover? But again, it's not for me to decide that. It's for me to be there, support, offer them the pathway, whichever pathway they might choose. And again, just because I'm in AA and that worked for me does not mean that's going to work for everybody. But I can offer my experiences, my support, and then it may be that it's not until 40 years from now, when I'm well out of the company, that something clicks and they finally get it.
And, you know, it may be that even in the beginning you didn't know AA would work for you.
Right.
Of course. And you said well, all right, I'll go because I have to go. Mm-hmm. But in the end, it did. So if you were to, which you just said a lot, people who are going through what you went through 15 to 20 years ago, it was, I know there's not a thing you could say, and you work on this every single day and try to say, first of all, you can certainly relate to what they're going through. And there's nothing magical you can say. But I think the theme I keep hearing from you is not giving up, the persistence, and just keeping with it, and keeping with it, and keeping with it, and keeping with it. And that's, I think, what you're telling me, that
right.
And you're a great example of that, because look where you are now. Look how you're helping other people. And you're very intelligent, articulate, you look like you have confidence. So let me tell you, you've really come a long way, baby, as they say. But it's certainly evident of what you're doing now, and I commend you tremendously for that. And I'm sure that all the other aspects of your life, personally and professionally, are just going to keep going in a more positive way. I think you have a tremendous story that you've told, and a great example to others who are in the depths of it now,
right.
to say, look, you can come out and actually help people. Your life, I would imagine, is in many ways a lot more fulfilling. You seem to have a lot of confidence. And well, you do. I did. Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
I could listen to you to talk about this all day. I think and so if anyone is going through what you've gone through, and we ask this a lot and they don't know where to turn. Where's the first place you tell them to call or reach out to?
There's always the AA hotline if you simply don't know anything about anything.
That's a good place to start.
There's an AA hotline. There's also the meeting guide app. It's a little blue app with a white chair. It'll tell you all the meetings in your area all day long. I would go to a meeting and just say, hey, I'm new. That's all you have to say. You don't have to say. You don't even have to admit that you have a problem. Maybe you don't know that you have a problem.
I'm new. What do I do?
I'm new, and people will come.
Yeah.
Whether you want them to or not, people will come.
And as you've seen, a lot of people will just be persistent and not give up. Nobody's going to just let you go because they're not judgmental and what you've experienced.
I would not be sitting here today if people hadn't believed in me. Even, my personal life, my sponsor, I'm supposed to call and check in every so often. She'll send little eyeballs when I haven't, as a reminder, like, hey, don't forget about me. Or I'll call and she'll say, well, it's really nice to hear your voice. And that's like her way of telling me, like,
oh yeah, hey, it's been overdue.
Professionally, my direct supervisor right now, I am good at my job. I am aware of that, but I've been promoted 3 times in a year and a half, and
I'm not surprised.
It's absolutely because I have somebody behind me who believes in me, who sees something that I don't always see in myself, and she pushes me outside my comfort zone. She helps me, grow and learn professionally. I remember she was interviewing me for my current position, and I kept using AA words. So in AA, we're taught to, I speak my defects or my shortcomings, right? Because I'm very transparent about what I struggle with, what challenges I've had to overcome, and she was kind of pointing out that I speak very negatively about myself, but it's because that's the only way that I know how to help another alcoholic is to
learn behavior. That's all.
This is what I still struggle with.
Right.
It's not sunshine and rainbows just because I'm sober, but I had to kind of learn how to take those words out, and she's just coached me up the whole way to help me get where I am,
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've got quite a lot to offer to people, and I can see that. So, no, I'm not surprised, and I think the MHA is very lucky to have you on board.
It's a very good company to work for. They offer so many services to different populations.
Would you suggest anybody get in touch directly with the MHA?
If they are struggling with substance use, for men, they have the grits. They can kind of take referrals. MHA actually has a LGBTQT treatment house. They are currently opening a sober house for women and children.
Okay.
We have the ABLE houses. So right now there's one men's house and one women's house.
And this is in the Springfield area?
Yep.
Right.
One men, one women, but they're in the process of opening another men's, and then one for women and children.
How would somebody find anything about the MHA on the website? What is the website?
So the website is Mental Health Association.
mentalhealthassociation.com.
I'm not sure.
Well, Google it.
Maybe,
Mental-
.org.
Probably .org, Mental Health
Or you
Association.
could just Google it and call the front desk, and they'll be more than happy
But
to
that's a
direct
good place
you.
to
Absolutely.
to start. So, well, Leigha, we're talking here with Leigha Neiford, and Leigha, Leigha Neiford from the MHA. I'm really glad you came, and thanks for sharing your story, for all that you're doing. I think you're doing fantastic work, and you know, I think we always have more to talk about. I'd love to have you back again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you real soon.